topic will be International Women Days exclusive Women Tech Leadership. We have our awesome speakers here, which I think everyone is very familiar with. I will jump straight to the introduction of our WWCode. So in case you guys are not familiar with us, we are actually an NGO founded in San Francisco back in many years ago, and KL chapter is a very young chapter where we are only founded in 2014. And what we do is we host a lot of workshops, events with a lot of corporate company and also other self-learners, other individuals that are keen to share their experience with us. So we have physical events back then before the pandemic happens, and we are keen to start something some physical events sometime this year as well. So stay tuned with us. Within the last 2 years, we have hosted a lot of virtual events, including talks, panel discussion, even workshops that has like breakout rooms with all of our volunteers. And we welcome everyone that believe in the mission of empower women in technology. So these entire workshop events are not limited to just girls, because we believe that, you know, for all this kind of mission, we always need our male friends to help in this mission. Yeah. So today we are going to spend a little of time to introduce about the team. Then we will go straight into the main topic, where I will pass it to our moderator Lisa later, and it will be a panel discussions where we have a few burning questions to ask the speakers, and then we will spend the next 10 minutes on Q&A. The last 10 minutes will be just purely a wrap-up session. A very light and casual panel discussion, so feel free to just chat in the chat, put your question or comments in the chat, right? Then whenever we pick it out, we can always discuss about that. So before we start, some of the house rules that we have is you may notice that you are not able to unmute yourself. So if you really want to speak, want to voice some of your opinions and all, we do have a platform for you. You can raise your hand, and then our organizing team will then spot out and unmute you, right? And the other one is, if you are shy, didn't want to hear your voice get recorded, you can actually post the questions in our chat group, and we will pick up the questions and get them answered during the Q&A sessions. The last one will be a group photo. So when we have the wrap up, it will be great if everyone can just turn on their cameras, and then we can take our, you know, social distancing group photo for today's sessions. Yep, and the last one is the session will be recorded, so be careful when you turn on the video. Okay, so who are our speakers and moderator? I think we all are very familiar. We have Kimberley from Grab, we have Amy from Microsoft, and Anne from Maxis, and our moderator is Lisa. I'll pass the floor to Lisa to kick off the entire session. Lisa, here you go.
Thank you, Brianna. Afternoon, everyone. Hi, my name is Lisa. I'm the head of software engineering and testing and DevOps and all that good stuff in Petronas. I hope everybody's had a good lunch, but not too good to send you into a food coma during our panel here today. Thank you for coming and riding this wave of diversity and inclusion with us. There have been a lot of events around this topic, especially this time of year when International Women's Day rolls around. So thank you for choosing to be here with us. So why has the internet brought us here today? Okay, so we all know that diversity and inclusion is important. Lots of studies show that it boosts creativity, innovation, productivity, and most of all, your personal growth, because you learn the most from people who are not like you. So we're here today to hear from three amazing women, Annie, Anne, and Kimberley, who will talk both about their professional experience with diversity and inclusion initiatives, their advice and tips on what works, their opinions and what doesn't, and their own personal experience in the workplace as well, with a particular focus on women in technology roles. Okay, so I'll repeat again, you're encouraged to ask questions in the chat, and we will unmute you at logical checkpoints during this panel. I'll let my colleagues decide from the organizing committee. So, okay, let's get to it. You didn't tune in to hear me ramble. So let me allow my fellow panelists to introduce themselves. Okay, so why don't we get started with Annie? Annie, why don't we start with you?
Hey, Lisa. It's such a pleasure to spend the Saturday afternoon like this. It's my favorite topic, and a lovely co-panelist and our beautiful moderator right there. So I'm Annie Mathew. I'm based out of KL, and I lead developer relations for Microsoft for Asia Pacific. And I love the job because my job is to win the hearts and minds of you guys, people who are working in technology, and help you do more and be more. So that's a little bit about my work. I'm basically an electrical engineer who loves code. Never got to do a real coding job, but I work all day with coders. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you, Annie. That's me as well. God forbid if my developer should ever let Lisa Chan touch production code. Get away, get away. So let's move on to Kimberley. Kimberley, if you could.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Hi everyone, I'm Kimberley. I'm from Grab. I have been with Grab for close to 6 years now, done quite a few roles during my time here. Started out within the Malaysia team, and right now I'm actually part of the regional team leading up safety and quality for all of Grab, so any market that Grab is in, but still Malaysian at heart, and so I'm based in KL as well, just like Annie. And yeah, Grab has really been the first foray for me into the tech space. Actually, prior to working in Grab, I didn't think that this would be a career path for me at all. I was interested in tech, interested in the innovations that were coming out, but always thought that I was going to just be an end user. So my journey for me has been quite interesting. We'll probably talk about it a little bit more during the panel. But yeah, that's a little bit more about me.
Thanks, Kimberley. It's really interesting because we've come such a long way that tech companies are now putting a focus on safety. It used to be just oil and gas companies like ours, where there could be fatalities, and now it's like a priority everywhere. So we're keen to hear more about that. But last but not least, Anne.
Hi, thank you, Lisa, and hi, Kimberley and Annie. So glad to be here with both of you, and so I am head of delivery and innovation in Maxis. So I'm basically leading a team of testers and developers. So I oversee a lot of product delivery, especially the consumer-facing digital channels. So in Maxis, so if you're a Maxis customer, you know the apps that you use are literally actually developed by our team. So the website that you access to are actually developed by my team as well. So, and not limited to that. So if you walk into Maxis Center, for example, the frontliner, the apps or the website that they serve you are actually also developed by us as well. So it's almost like the digital touch point that you ever come across. Maxis are all developed by our team. So background, I'm local, and I was I was an MMU graduate, and then I went to the UK, pursue my postgraduate in University of Manchester, and then I lived in the UK for nearly 10 years, 9.5 years, after I had my first baby, and then I moved back, and then I stopped for a while. Because I came back with a job in the UK, so I worked remotely for them for about 2 years, and then I stopped because I was having my second baby here. And then after that, I stopped for a year before I rejoined the workforce because I have a special need second born. And then when I returned back to work, I feel I was very lucky because the job that I was able to land after my second maternity leave was brilliant. I mean, I literally just have to work from home 3 days a week. And so the other 2 days I can choose to be in the office, or if I need to, I can work from home. So that kind of like actually got me the opportunity to get back to workforce. Background has been software engineering. I was a developer and progressed my career throughout, mainly on test automation and DevOps related stuff. And now I'm in kind of like more people managerial role, and overseeing architectural design kind of position. Yes, that's about me.
Thank you, Anne. You must have so many personal experiences to share about this, because without these kinds of initiatives, you probably never would have been able to get back into the workforce. So that's very
That's
inspiring that
correct.
you're here with us today. So, okay, let's get right into the heart of it. Let's start with a fundamental question. Personally, I've always been skeptical, at least at the beginning, about D&I initiatives, because I always thought it's like, oh, there's a lot of events, there's a lot of high tea, there's a lot of women's shocks and dairy, but does anything actually happen out of it? So, do we actually fundamentally change anything about the way our companies work and how we address D&I in a very real way in the workplace? So I just want to get some thoughts from any of you. What do you think about this, and what are some of the real things that companies can do to really support D&I in a real way? Anyone?
Yeah, I can go. I can go. That is core, and I think the short answer is yes. Things do happen, but two ways to look at it. Within some organizations, yes, you see the needle moving, because even at Microsoft, we've been publishing the D&I report publicly since 2014, and I think there's just about 3% of Fortune 500 companies that do that. So we are in that segment where we publish publicly. And we see that from an 18%, we have moved the needle to 30.7% or so in 5 years. While so that's a growth in women employees of over 65% when the company grew at a 45% rate. So things can happen if there is focus. And the reason why the needle is moving is because it's not just a good to have thing in as in a mission right there, but it's in each of our core priorities. Each and every person has to fill in during the connect, which is our performance assessment thing that happens through 3 or 4 times a year. We have to write down what are we doing for D&I specifically, and that's a conversation with your manager, manager's having with his manager or her manager, and so on. So it trickles down. When there are goals and numbers, it moves. And on the other hand, I work with a lot of tech communities. So when the pandemic hit and we saw the 1.8x higher job loss for women, we got back to the women in tech communities, like Women Who Code as well, and had this close group conversation around how can we help you. And very interestingly, they passed the baton back and said, we're doing a lot of stuff, but we're not seeing the needle move. If you need to move the needle in the industry, you need to bring the players in it, not just communities, but actually companies like Microsoft, communities. You need jobs for that and things like that. So you need a platform. Someone needs to invest in it and have metrics and move it along the way. So that's how Code Without Barriers was born, and we'll talk about it at the end more. But yeah, I think we can move the needle because I have been working for D&I for a decade now, and I've seen that when we set goals and we're very focused about it, we actually move the needle.
Yeah. And it's great because what gets measured gets done, right? I mean, we know that
Yes.
from coding, right? You make the work visible, people start to talk about it, and they're like, yeah, I really have to get this done. And there have been senior leaders that have talked to me about job opportunities that have said that, Lisa, I'm absolutely convinced this year, right? I need to hire a senior leader. Okay, so they feel the pressure from their management to do that, and when they do, it's great. Not that I'm looking for a job in case my boss is like lurking somewhere in this call. But yeah, I think it's a great time to be a woman in tech, especially for like firms like Microsoft.
For
It's
all of
super
us.
interesting, actually, because Annie, you were saying that you've been working on this for a decade. Grab as a company is about to hit its 10-year birthday. And so like I was just reflecting on this question as well, because when Grab started at the time, we were already at a state where companies were starting to think about being more progressive. And so we were quite lucky in a way because we already had a very strong culture going in. I I don't know whether it's a combination of fate and hard work or what it was, but I think Grab has always had a very strong inclusive culture. And I don't just mean, women, I mean like anyone who is maybe a little bit more soft-spoken versus someone who's a little bit more aggressive, depending on what the role is. And so when I was chatting with a lot of our colleagues for IWD this year, this trend actually came out a lot. And a lot of people said, I didn't really think about the challenges as much when I wanted to join tech, because Grab as a company was already inviting. The culture was already inviting. And I think that's probably testimony to the fact that people always ask, hey, if we actually bring in more women and change the culture, will it really do anything? I think the answer is yes. Personally, I didn't really think about it myself until we had these conversations this year, and I realized that I did have opportunities to go into the tech space sooner, but I actually said no because I felt that there was too much of a bro culture, and I was honestly a little bit taken aback by this bro culture, and I felt a little bit out of place, and I thought, like, you know what, I'm just not going to enjoy working in these cultures and in these smaller startups that have this culture. But with Grab, I guess I never actually did give it too much of a second thought because it was always very welcoming. So I do think culture plays an important part. And yes, it will take some time to change and make sure everyone's on board. But yeah, it's not just for show, Lisa. I guess the answer to your question.
That's great. I mean, it's great to see the focus in both companies that are traditional and enterprise, and a bit older like Microsoft, and companies that are so new like Grab. And it's also interesting to see companies that are very new also have this really strong bro culture, right? Like you hear about all these scandals in game development, especially this bro culture, right? It makes you really worry about being a woman in tech, actually, and accepting a job elsewhere where you're not entirely familiar with the culture. It can be quite scary. So Anne, yes, tell us, what do you think about?
Okay, because I've been actually working abroad most of my life. Like I graduated, and then in less than a year, I went to the UK, and then I worked there for, I graduated my postgraduate, and then I worked for like 9 years plus, 8 years plus in the UK. I never felt that before, because I feel like over there, things are very natural, are very supportive. I feel like for every hard work that you do, you get a credit, and your manager actually acknowledged that so much. And then I feel like over here, maybe things would have been different. But to my surprise, when I come back, although I came back with a job in the UK where my room was literally my office, I was working remotely for 2 years. And then after that, when I was trying to return back to work, I was very skeptical about how I would fit into the culture here. Being away for so long is number one, got me thinking, how has the workplace here has changed? I had no clue. So to my surprise, after my second born, when I was looking at a job, and then I just happened to land on this opportunity where they said, well, we mandate it here. I mean, everyone just work from home 3 days, and you just have to get into the office for 2 days. I said, great, that's what I'm looking for. And then back then, actually, I got other offers as well. And then I turned that off last minute, obviously. I think they hated me for that, because I need the support. I have a second child, because he was literally allergic to many things. He could not consume any food. So I need someone at home to be able to take care of him, and I need to teach this person. So, and then I got very supportive manager. So I had a manager based off in LA, and he said, not an issue at all. We have been working like this for all this while. And then when I left that job and joined Maxis, again, to my surprise, I told myself, I don't want to settle for anything less than what I was already having in hand. But my manager just said that, just come and join us. What do you need from me? I said, well, I need to get home by 5. And then he said, yeah, you have it. And what else do you need? So he literally just said yes to everything that I said to him. So, even then also I was very skeptical. But I must say, thanks to this opportunity, I mean, that kind of like was an eye-opener to me, that how Maxis has been being a local company and being so progressive in their hiring as well, especially women, and being so supportive of how, they were going to try to get women back in the tech world. So yeah, I'm glad. I mean, I feel like this is so rare, but I think things has changed and I didn't realize that. And this is where, this is how things are in Maxis. I don't think we have to fight much here in terms of inclusion and gender equality, because you just have all very supportive managers out there to help you through, to give you the support that you need, literally. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I think overall, right, when it comes to preparedness to working from home, I think, right, the pandemic has made everybody suddenly prepared to work from home, okay? Even companies that weren't ready for it. So, in a way, a lot of people can do it now. It's just a choice, right? A personal choice, whether you want to allow your staff or your employees, or even just if you have a team of one, to do it. And I feel that is the case in some companies like mine. We have full capabilities to work from home, but obviously we have plans, we have facilities that need that run on shift. Okay, you can't leave them alone. But there are jobs, in the office especially, where you don't necessarily have to be at the office. And in many of these cases, it's not policy, right? It depends on the attitude of the supervisor, right? And whether or not they're comfortable allowing their staff to work from home, and to what degree you work from home, things like this. So, and I think that is the challenge a lot of people face today, which brings me to my next question, right? Given that some companies are very inviting, some companies are not, and some people struggle with like having kids, starting a family, getting back into the workforce, working from home, and all this. What do you think the top 3 things, in your opinion, companies should do to encourage more participation from women in the workplace? And I'm gonna ask you to rank this, like number 1, number 2, number 3, so that and we'll see whether any of your answers match. Lottery. Annie, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, so for me, for women to progress, while it's inviting and all that, there's still an issue in the professional growth within the company. So it's not like everything is hunky-dory. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about this. I hope in 10 years we don't have this conversation and we have achieved something. But we have issues, right? So for me, the number 1 thing organizations need to do is open opportunities for women vertically, laterally, vertically across the board. Because and there's this phrase of glass ceiling, and people say we broke the glass ceiling. You break one and you hit another one. It's like you're going in a lift or something and going across floors, and there's no lift. You literally are crashing through that. So I think number 1 is putting your money where the mouth is, and making sure that there are opening opportunities to it. That's an external facing. The second is allyship. So it's about the non-women, men and everybody else, being also aware and being allies for women. Because many a times, if you are the single woman sitting around the table with 10 men or 20 men, your voice just may not be heard, and you can speak louder, and maybe you can do many things, but it's always helps if there's a second or third person who is an ally and who's speaking up for you and supporting that idea and things like that. So there's something we need to do, but also that entire cultural change around curiosity for what women are going through, and the courage to support women. Courage for both men and women, but women who are in higher positions can also take up the courage and support women, younger women who are growing up. But more important for men, because at the leadership level, they say globally there is about 7% women in the leadership ranks, and if that doesn't change, that bro culture will still be there, and it will vary depending on what kind of table you are sitting around. If a predominant male, Caucasian, white table, then it's very difficult. But if the men themselves are diverse, maybe it's a little better. But it will take time to break into that with a critical mass. Like if you have 30% women around the table, then there's a critical mass to support each other and make voices heard, etc. So I think when I look at an organizational level, I think policy plus practice in terms of opening opportunities and mentoring, coaching women into those opportunities, because they may open and say, okay, no woman is right for this, so we're going ahead with men. I don't mean that way, but really putting your effort behind creating that pipeline of women talent and moving them into, so there it becomes a diverse table, and then you can take your hands off and say, okay, now this can roll on its own.
Was that 3, Annie? I lost count.
2.
Okay.
That was 2. And
That's
and I don't think you need a 3 from me, right? If you do need a 3, I can give you one. I was sitting in a CDO panel just last week, Chief Data Officers, talking about D&I in data and AI. And we had a poll to say that what's your barrier to increasing D&I? So everybody agrees you need D&I, but what's the barrier? So number 1 was skills. Agreed, we women need to skill up and get there. But number 2 was direct business benefits. So what's the business benefit of having D&I? That is a big, and there were about 100, nearly 100 chief data officer, head of IT kind of people sitting there, and a good number was saying, what's the business benefit? Now that gives you pause. Yeah. So there is business benefit, should quantify it, but is that the only thing? Isn't there also a social reform needed here? So yes, so I don't have an answer there, but that's my third one for the decision makers to really understand why we do this and put their weight behind it. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think we need to start circulating and sharing reports amongst ourselves, because we always say studies show, research shows. So that must be based on statistics, right? That translate to productivity, which then translates to the bottom line. But where are these studies? So I think we need to be a little bit more fact-based and statistically driven in some of our talks as well. Okay, any other thoughts as to what is the top 3 that we can what we can do to push D&I as an agenda in our companies?
Yeah, I agree with most of the things Annie said about it. The man allies, I feel like is very powerful one, because if you have that, it gives you a lot of assurance in that workplace. I know that we women can relate to each other easily, but would men be able to do that? So if you have a group of men ally that is able to understand this, it makes you feel very safe in that workplace, and then it creates you that safe space to be yourself and can talk about anything and can share about anything. And we shy away from sharing the struggle that we go through as a woman to juggle between job and family, and we almost feel like we're ashamed. We should not talk about this. But if you get the support from the man ally, I feel like it definitely helps a lot. That's what I feel. Like in my case, I feel like having the support from my male manager makes a big difference to my to my career change as well. Otherwise, I would have doubted myself if I was able to do this at all. So yeah, that's kind of like what I think.
Agree. Sometimes some of my male colleagues have to leave meetings early because they're like, I have to go pick up my kids from school. I'm like, yeah, you go, do your part.
Exactly.
Kimberley.
Yeah, male allyship is also on my list. I think that's probably going to win the top answer to that question. But it really is something that's so necessary. I mean, I just share with you my personal experience most recently. I just had my first kid, and I was really concerned because I was, I'm someone who's also quite career driven. I was really worried, whether or not I'd be able to handle the stress of coming back. What happens if I leave, and after the few months that I'm away, that maybe I will lose touch basically. And when I come back in, it's going to be very hard for me to hit the ground running again. And so I had a lot of these thoughts. And my manager, he is a male, very supportive. Like the moment I told him about the maternity, even then I I had concerns like, how's he going to react? You know, I'm leading such a critical portfolio where I've always been on, and my team has always been on, and I'm the person who reports if there's an issue. I'm the person who reports there's a risk. You know, how is he going to react to this person now not being here? And he was extremely supportive. And I had many other male allies and business partners, like team partners within Grab that I work with very closely. And in every conversation I had, these male colleagues, the first statement that came out was not related to work. The first thing that they said to me was, wow, congratulations. And then they went into their own personal experience. Oh, I'm a dad, you know, you're going to love it. You're going to have tough times. And then someone else said like, oh, you know, you're going to go through a lot of stress. You probably have a ton of things, you know, like they were very open. And they say, you know, I remember my wife going through this, you know, don't worry about work. And I had 4 people in Grab tell me this. And these are all people who I work with within Grab. You know, they are like the head of product within engineering, the engineering team and the tech space that I work with as partners, the business space, the country operations teams. And so I got a ton of support. And I think that it really makes all the difference because you can then be more confident. And I felt that it actually helped me come back even stronger to the company because I felt like, yeah, you know, this company actually supported me when I needed to take time off. They supported me throughout my maternity. You know, they were just very respectful. And I think that's something that's very critical. I know that it's probably the exception, and most women don't actually get this luxury of having this kind of male allyship support. But I'm a big advocate for it as well. And I think like wherever we can, we definitely need to try and spread this kind of education that it's needed. This support is actually really needed.
Yeah, absolutely. And that makes me think of something as well, you know, when people panic when you're not around. And I love this book. I tell everybody about it. It's called Turn the Ship Around by David Marquette. And his perspective on leadership is that you're not a good leader when things fall apart, you know, when you're no longer there. You're a good leader when things don't fall apart, when you're not around. So I think regardless, whether you're a guy or girl, you have to both make sure that your team can handle it when things get real, when you're not there. And also your boss understands that my team can handle it, you know, and you don't always need to rely on me. I think that's always good because then it's not just about maternity. You get to go on holiday. My staff know I like to go on holiday because I have a lot of hobbies. I like to go diving. So the pandemic was like awful for me. And we're getting some great questions from our very participative audience in the chat. So I think I'll take some of them now. Okay, and there's a question for you, but you know, after you answer it, anyone feel free to chip in your opinion on this. Did you face any difficulties of discrimination when you were searching for a job after your year-long maternity?
As a matter of fact, yes. I mean, when I was trying to get back after my precisely second maternity leave, so I walked into this company, which I don't want to name the company, and to my surprise, the person that kind of like intimidated me with a kind of question of saying that, well, you know, you have been away for a year and you are probably not worth what you're asking for. And she was so blunt right in front of my face. And I was trying to remain my cool, but as soon as I walk out, I cursed myself. I said, I'll never walk back in here. And you know, but the truth is, you don't realize how much if a very career-driven woman, when they're trying to return back to work after their maternity leave, they are very charged because, you know, you have been given birth to the baby and you are a very career-driven person and you're supercharged. You just do not know the magnitude that you could go because you wanted it so much. You don't want to give up your career. And which I find it very, very sad that when he threw back that to me, and it was from a woman, not from a man. So yes, I did have this, but I literally just tell myself that just be patient, just keep looking, and things would turn out. So this what kind of like got me through. You know, I was also even doubting myself. I mean, I was already also in doubt myself if I was able to secure a fairly good job here, but yeah, it did happen. But I would say just, it's like there are plenty of fish in the ocean. So one said this kind of bad things to you doesn't mean that all would say the bad things to you. So yeah, I would say just ignore and just move on. You would find the right employer for yourself, the one that who is willing to invest in you and let you thrive.
I would like to add on to what Anne said. I have two daughters, adults now, so many years back. But both the times I have taken almost a year off. It was mostly the first time it was actual off. The second time it was just they gave me leave and extended, and so on and so forth. But when I came back, I didn't want to go back to the same organization. I was looking out. And my problem was I did not face a direct, I did not even get 2 interviews because there was this 1-year gap in the resume, which is not exactly a gap. I'm saying I'm on leave, but they're seeing that I'm on leave for a year. And right off the bat, I think they just rejected it right there. So it was hard to get back. However, there was one thing going for my favor, that each time I took a break, I would make sure that I'm skilling up. So that was my secret sauce to get back to work. So my first daughter is a COBOL, and now I've dated myself. And the second one was Oracle. We call them for joke like that at home. But yeah, so I was in manufacturing. I badly wanted to get into IT side of things. So took the time to just enjoy learning. Took mother support to look after the kid, go spend time learning, certified. And so, like Anne said, when I came back, like I was super charged with new skills and stuff. So while when I applied to a job, some did not give me even the first go. I landed a great job at the end of it. So for me, the first half of my career, skilling and certification was the way to move industries, move from job to job and things like that. The second half is different, but this was a big learning for me that worked for me actually at that time.
Does anybody else have this mental image of Annie and Anne like cuddling a baby and coding at the same time, doing this? I can't imagine that your motherhood was like that in the early days.
I had a lot of support systems, so I would be watching my baby. Somebody would be looking after.
You wrote a script, to detect motion, right? So
yes.
Actually, one of the things now I'm remembering about Microsoft is that you have extremely long maternity leaves for your men as well. I remember one of our sales executives like saying, "Oh, my wife had a baby. I'm going to be away for 3 months." I'm like, 3 months? Who's having the baby?
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, it's so cool. I mean, why shouldn't the men be around to help, right? So paternity leave actually is one of the things that's just important as maternity leave, isn't it? Because creating a whole new person needs as much help as you can get.
But talking about this,
sorry,
Annie. Sorry,
no,
I mean, you just mentioned about this maternity leave thing, right? I mean, in Europe, they do have this kind of thing like where you can actually swap your maternity leave to the paternity with your husband. So if let's say you have a better earning power than your spouse, your husband, then you are allowed to actually get back to work, and they kind of like take on your maternity leave to do the job, So this is really, really great, because I feel like ultimately it has to be something that is practical. Whoever that is being the main breadwinner of the family, they would want to stay in that job to provide. So yeah, there are things like that. I'm just waiting for things like that to happen in this part of the world.
Actually.
So you can tell your future husband and say, look, well, I give her the baby, then you take my leave, and then I go back to work. I love that idea.
Microsoft. You want to apply Microsoft? Go. Apply. Just find the one with the longest paternity leave and apply. So
also Facebook. I think Facebook has a 3-month paternity leave as well.
Oh wow.
And people time it. So take the 6 months for the mother, and then the father switches on to the next 3 months. So 9 months are covered.
Wait, I have an interesting question here. Maybe Kimberly, you wanna take this because I may have an answer for this as well since you haven't spoken about in a bit. I've always heard that we are encouraged as women to fake it till you make it. How do you think whether this is sound advice or not when entering the technology field?
Oh, that's interesting. I suppose it also depends on which industry you're in and what fake it till you make it means. I think in some respects, the fake it till you make it helps build confidence if you are someone who is of low self-esteem, or you feel like you can't really, you think that you can't do it. And I think like a lot of women and people that I've mentored as well over the years, like they come to me and say like, hey, I just don't feel like I belong here. I feel like I can't do it. And so I wouldn't necessarily say fake it, because actually a lot of these people have the necessary skill sets. They have the right background, and quite frankly, if they put their mind to it, could probably get the job done. It's really just about, you know, that last bit of confidence to really push them through the door. And we don't have a very strong enough support of like mentorship and things like that within Malaysia. I think it's up and coming, and if you have the right network, maybe you do. But a lot of women who are first starting out, and when you're junior, you don't really feel comfortable, right? Because first of all, you are starting out. People know you are starting out. You know that you're being judged, and you don't want to come across as like, oh, I'm young, I don't know much. So there is that element of psyching yourself up. And I think like regardless of what it is, whether or not you're taking your first interview in tech, or whether or not like, you know, you're giving a presentation, or whether or not you're just meeting someone and you really want to impress that person because you want to be able to get that contact, having that self-confidence and psyching your own self up sometimes actually does help. And I think like you present yourself better if you know, if you're confident and you know that like, hey, you know what, this is me, this is my background, I know this is my skill set, this is what I have to offer, there's nothing to lose, right? And so I think some element of that fake it till you make it maybe does help. And I quite frankly, it definitely helped me even when I was starting out to like psych myself up to make sure like when I was going into interviews, I presented the best version of myself. You know, I think that's something we all want to make sure we do. We tend to think that, you know, other people like, yeah, they've got it all, you know, they don't have to worry about confidence. They go in, they'll definitely get it. And a lot of times when I've spoken to particularly junior folks who's trying to enter, I think like this is one thing that people struggle with and they don't self-recognize.
Yeah, agree. And this is kind of related to the other question that we got also, that one where Amelia, I think, struggles to imagine herself in higher positions because all she sees is men in those roles, right? So, you know, subconsciously she thinks, you know, I mean, we think maybe that this hurts our chances. And how do we push past this this mindset? And I think, right, and I don't know whether this is a stereotype, you guys can agree or disagree with me, but when you look at a job description and you think about whether to apply, a man will be like, yeah, I know 50% of that, I'm going to apply. A woman will be like, I only know 70%. I don't know the remaining 30%. I'm not qualified for this job. You know, this is the like straight thing you go to. Because every time sometimes I look at the JD of a job, I think I'd like to do that. I'm not qualified for this. I can't. I don't know the remaining. And the thing is, you're never 100% fit for the job, right? Who can find that unicorn that is technically skilled, good with stakeholders, good at, you know, communication? All these unicorn, it's really hard to find. So what are your thoughts on
It's super true. Actually, like that one hits home. We have these discussions within Grab. We've been having it for years. In fact, when someone first raised this to me, I didn't think about it. It's true, but you know, you don't necessarily think about it. And so sometimes the reasoning that people give is like, hey, I hired this because this guy was the best fit for the job. No one else applied. And then they tend to put the blame on like the women because the women never actually submitted their CV in the first place. And so they're like, hey, you know, the role was open, anyone could have applied, but it's not my fault. And I think we've come to realize that actually there is a role for companies to play to make sure that not just the phrasing, but also how we actually share like the day-to-day roles is not just, it doesn't always come across as like, you have to be assertive, you have to be, you know, like driving, you have to be leading. Yes, there's an element of leading, but I think that the definition of what it means to be a leader today has changed. It doesn't necessarily mean like that typical male, like you have to be assertive, you know, you can't be empathetic, for example. So I think that definition has changed a lot. And we've started to try and embed a little bit more of the culture into some of the job roles as we are putting it out there, at least for Grab. And I think that's one thing. The other thing is also, we've been trying very hard to change unconscious bias. I think those two words are probably a big theme with a lot of companies right now, but we have been trying hard because I think that even with the existing male leaders, they do need to recognize sometimes that maybe something is going against some of the women trying to climb up in certain roles. And I think I saw a fleeting comment there as well about, yes, not seeing yourself as a women leader. Sometimes you'll see like a small team, a tech team, like data analytics, team of 10, right? Like the leader is a male, the rest of them, the other 8 are males, and there's one female analyst in there, great at her job, but probably it's bypassed for promotion because like, hey, didn't step up enough, or hey, didn't. There's always a justification, like a performance justification, and we have come to recognize that these things need to be questioned, whether or not like the male manager who's leading that team is recognizing that actually this person might be at a disadvantage. She might not be speaking up as much because of some form of intimidation within the room, or maybe she's soft-spoken naturally and it's very hard for people to hear whenever she tries to interject. So we have come to realize that being able to be a bit more conscious about some of these nuances within our teams, it's absolutely necessary. And we raise these questions, like we have actually a template that we give to a lot of the tech leaders to question themselves during performance review. Am I passing this person up for promotion really because this person couldn't do it, or this person was absent, or are there other factors that's actually preventing this person from doing their job well? And it just helps you to question yourself internally. I wouldn't say that we've gotten it all right. I think like there's still a lot more for us to do, but yeah, that's I think like something that we all can just do a little bit more of.
Okay, so yeah, that's interesting because that brings us to the topic of confidence, doesn't it? And you know, and Annie, I'd love to hear from the two of you. How do we help our female staff visualize themselves and also position them for success in the workplace? I mean, surely there are things that we can do.
Go ahead, Anne.
Okay. Well, I just feel like women, we are very critical towards ourselves. Like what you just said, that when we look at the JD, we feel like if we are 70% fit and then we focus on that 30% that we are not. But the truth is, if the company ever hire you for 100% fit, you have no growth opportunity there. So, so yeah, so you have to look at it. When the company hire you also, they would want to see your potential growth as well, because if you're not growing, how would you be able to stay? So let's look at it this way. Talking about overcoming this, I feel like I was a very timid person to begin with. But living abroad, actually, you know, in the beginning, got me doubted my ability as well. But one very, very interesting fact back in my university day is that so I enrolled into this advanced computer science course, which was actually male dominant course. And there was this Canadian guy, I still remember him, and he dropped out halfway through. To my surprise, that kind of like got me thinking, actually, I'm not that bad, am I? So it's like we are being so critical and we doubt ourselves that we can't do things, but no, we can. There are so many things that we can. So, but first is actually you need to get rid of the thought that you're not good enough to begin with, to overcome this. So sometimes it's all about we thinking so critically about we can't. So, and then over the years, I feel like, plus after I enter into the workforce in the UK, I feel like with those, you know, those acknowledgement from my ex-managers, they kind of like told me so many things as well that maybe all this while I have been too critical about myself, you know, that I should really start get this out of my head. And we even think that Caucasian are smarter, for example. I don't think so. Because if I were to tell you now, if you go to London, you know, the top university like Imperial College are all filled with Chinese, Asian students taking up PhD courses, which they, you know, the locals were not bothered. And where are the brains, honestly? I mean, I'm not saying that they are not smart people, but all I'm saying is we are all equal. We are all the same. But you have to kind of like get rid of the thought that we are less smarter than that. So it's all in us.
And I think we all try very hard not to conform with the stereotype as well. Maybe that's why we're so critical
All
of
right. Yeah, maybe.
comments, right? People saying that ladies cause drama, lady bosses are hard, they're very
Exactly.
they gossip, they suffer, so we better not have so many ladies in the office. You know, this nonsense. So you know, you try very hard. I'm not going to gossip. I am not, you know, going to like hit below the belt when it comes to certain comments. I'm going to be very professional at the workplace and I'm going to excel in my job. So my experience is that when you see a woman at the top leadership level, right, she is truly extraordinary, right? Especially if they are all men, and usually 2 or 3 times more interesting and extraordinary than the men who are at the same level. I mean, that's been my experience anyway, because in a lot of male-dominated organizations, right, if you see a woman suddenly there in a 90% male-dominated leadership workbench, you think to yourself, holy moly, she must be great. She must be amazing. So Annie, sorry, you had something to say.
On the topic of confidence, and I love that. I mean, that is core, right? So for me, I look at it in 2-3 ways. One is expectations. So if you are worrying about it's all men in that, and how do I take that role or something else, set your expectations right. There are only 12% women in the entire IT industry worldwide. So why would you expect there to be many women in wherever you go? So first, to build confidence, set your expectations right, that all is well when there is only one woman in the room. That's the first thing. The second one is courage. So, and courage is not some supernatural thing. It's not the absence of fear. It's just that one step overcoming fear. So for all the women you see in higher positions or doing this or doing that, remember they are overcoming it every day, every week, every month, every year. And I sit down and talk to very senior women, and they go through the same thing. And I know that from my experience, so I was on the board of HIMSS, which is an IT organization that drives tech into healthcare. It's a global organization. I was in India. I happened to be a board member. I was the only woman among 10 men there. So 1 woman and 10 men. We are sitting around the table and waiting and kind of deciding on who will be the board member. I mean, who will be taking the president, vice. All the roles were open up. They were having a reshuffle. So I'm sitting at that table and thinking to myself, oh, I have to do this on the weekends. And then I have my kids. Then I have Microsoft's work, which takes up 200% of my time. And there are so many responsibilities at home. Maybe I should take a supportive role, like maybe a assistant secretary or a vice president or something like that. And people are going around the table and saying what role they want, and it's approaching me, and I'm thinking to myself, but what am I doing here? What am I telling my daughters? I'm telling them to raise your hand, take the leadership position. And here I am validating that I cannot take a leadership role because this is going to be super hard for me. And in that instant, I said, I don't know whether I'll be able to do this, but I'm going to raise my hand and say, I want to be the president, the highest position on that board. and I said that. I went home and a flurry of self-doubt. Am I even right? I'm not a doctor. I'm not in healthcare. I'm in tech. I'm saying I want to lead this board for this global chapter, blah, blah, blah. All those came rolling down. I got it. So I became the first woman president for HIMSS India. And then I had this bunch of, out of that 9, I think at least 3 men were solidly with me. Like they helped me through everything. I went back to them and said, hey, I don't know, I can't do this without you. I went to my husband, I went to my daughters and told them, you will see less of me now. And everybody said, just go for it, Ma, you will do it. So yeah, so that's my thing. And I went through so much of self-doubt. And you looking at me, you might think that, oh, Annie is cool, she rocks, she does this all day long. No, I go through this every time there is growth. It is difficult. And you have to have some amount of self-confidence and then maybe a little bit of idiotic self-confidence and just go for it.
Hashtag YOLO. Okay. I mean, I honestly, that's what I think when I raise my hands for things sometimes. But you're right about those having colleagues that support you, because it helps to overcome a little bit of that self-doubt. I mean, I never would have gotten this job if it wasn't for the support of my boss who nominated me for the role and the support of his boss as well. So yeah, allies really, really do help. And I think that brings us to one of the questions, like how do we get the male allies on board? Any tips for this? Do we just like set KPI, get on board? Or it'll affect your bonus?
That's a very interesting question. Yeah, I'll go later. Go ahead, Kimberly.
I do think like culture plays a part. The truth is, honestly, it's hard to find male allies who, are like the golden gems, who, say all the right things and they do all the right things. And I have met so many of them. And sometimes I keep thinking like, actually, how did they turn out this way when so many others still don't even realize there is a problem? But I do think like culture inherently plays a part. That the truth is there's no short-term fix that we can all do today and tomorrow things are going to be great. I definitely think like it takes time, but having that very open culture, like constantly talking about the fact that we are not there yet, I think is still quite critical. But sometimes a lot of people feel like, hey, there's so much to celebrate, like women can travel independently now. Women can, like you can be a mom and you can also lead a company. Yeah, there's so many examples, and people tend to take it for granted. And interestingly enough, like this IWD, I saw a ton of social media posts that instead of just celebrating, a lot of these posts had a ending where they said like, actually, we're not there yet. Like actually women still earn less. Actually, there's not really enough senior women in like leadership positions. People, yes, are coming back to the workforce, but we're just not there yet. And I think that message is still very important to send. And hopefully, like if we keep talking about this and keep like being more open about this, and companies keep also encouraging the same tone, eventually people recognize and go like, yeah, actually, I didn't realize this was a problem, and I'm gonna start stepping up. So it is a little bit of that, I think, at least from Grab's end. Annie and please feel free to jump in.
I have one very funny one actually. At least when I was in the UK, I feel like normally gay male friends, they are great. That's how I started. They are very supportive because they are soft to begin with, and they are good listeners. I always find that, yeah, I don't know.
I feel like they're a minority themselves, I guess,
exactly,
right?
Exactly.
They get discriminated against at the workplace, like women do, I imagine. So I guess it's equally hard in the workplace for gay men.
Yeah, and they can relate to your struggle, and they are such good listeners to begin with. At least this has been the case for me. That's what I would look out. Not that I would purposely go and look out, but this is at least the one that I come across, and I feel like they are, yeah, that's they are the bunch of people that I love to be with. Yes.
That's definitely, I think, I would say in Malaysia especially, it's an unspoken part of diversity and inclusion.
Yeah.
Is it? You know, we talk about women, we talk about ethnicity, but we rarely talk about LGBT in the workplace, and getting it, you know, on the agenda with like GLCs especially, like, do we say it? Do we not say it? Do we even ask that question for
Yeah.
people? You know, ask them to apply. Is that right? You know, don't ask, don't tell, right? The policy generally. Um, but okay, I think let's take another question. We have a question that got a lot of likes about career change. Okay, so how do we make a career change? Maybe I'm from a non-technical background. You know, how do I make a career change into technology? You know, number one, I already non-technical. Number two, you know, it's a male-dominated industry. So what's your advice for me to make that shift into tech?
I can go first on this. It's a topic, again, close to my heart because we're doing a lot of work on skilling. And I'll tell you a story of one person from Malaysia. She is Sarah Koo, Siemens Energy, and she was in a very non-technical role. And there's another one from Grab I can talk about as well. So she went through Code Without Barriers, actually runs programs to skill people on cloud fundamental, AI fundamental, and data fundamental. So we're inviting women to come learn AI fundamental because AI is going to cut across all industry, all roles. So that's a great career path for women. So she actually came into on a Saturday, and by Monday she got certified. She's non-tech. So first of all, be aware that tech certification, tech is not all very coding and high tech. There's a lot of levels of tech. And I think what they're saying, there's a gap of some 175 million people in digital technologies, and that covers all of this. So first of all, go skill up and don't hesitate. Just try one and you'll see it's very good for non-tech. And then the next thing Sarah Koo did was, there was a prime project in Australia that had AI in it, and she wanted that. So with that certification, she went and applied, and I think she's close to getting it. So she made a massive move from a project manager, a non-technical project manager kind of a role, to a core project where she'll be part of that AI project. So that's one example of what happened. Real life example. Another one is Grab. I know in Grab Singapore, there's someone who went from a non-tech to a very tech PM role again. So there are a lot of roles in there which need a business understanding, which need logic analysis, but doesn't need coding. So you can get into those, and those are very exciting roles to be in. So yeah. And then there's the no code piece, right? The Power Platform, which is from Microsoft, but there are others as well. The low code, no code, and they say in the future, sometime into the future, we envision hardcore developers not coding anymore because AI is going to do the coding for them. So imagine, get prepared for that. If you're going to be in this industry 20 years, 30 years from now on, get technical for sure. And then you will find those roles coming along.
That's great. That's good insights. Good insights, Annie. Either Kimberley or Anne, you want to chip in on that?
Yeah, sure. I think Annie gave a Grab example already, so it's halfway there. But yeah, I also had a very similar journey. And to be honest, I just sort of pushed myself to try. And I told myself that the first role that I'm gonna get is probably not gonna be the role that I'm playing for the next 5-10 years. It's going to be a role where I'm assessing whether or not I like where I am and where I want to take that. And so even when I joined Grab, I knew, right, like how deep do you want to go in the tech? Because even with Grab, you have a very operational side. And then you also have someone who's on a product role where you need to understand a little bit of both. You have someone who's doing analysis, someone who's doing the actual coding. It's very different roles. You need to understand a little bit of it at every stage in order for you to have a meaningful conversation. But I definitely did learn more on the job and get more technical as the job progressed, and also because I recognized that I was more interested in it than I originally thought. And so when I moved roles, I naturally was attracted to roles that got me talking about more of the technical side, helping me understand, like, actually, how do you build this? Actually, what did you build? Rather than just saying like, oh, we want this screen and we want the screen to do this, right? So I think like when you are first moving, maybe don't just have that openness to give yourself the allowance to know, like, yeah, you know, maybe there are certain aspects of the role that you thought you're gonna love. You might not like it, but it's just the next step, right? It keeps you progressing forward, and that's what you want. You want to keep growing yourself and challenging yourself. And if something doesn't turn out the way that you didn't think, then that's just a learning point for you in your career.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think I probably have the most non-technical background out of all of you, right? I did politics, philosophy, and economics at university, so totally non-tech. And yeah, I kind of fell into this role as well because I did a lot of, and it's good advice from both Kimberly and Anne. The way to get into tech is to do roles adjacent to technology, because I did PM roles for technology projects. I did change management roles for technology projects, and that's how I got hands-on experience with how technology is implemented in enterprises. And once you do that, if you feel you can upskill yourself a little more, then by all means move into roles that are even more techy, but not necessarily all coding. There are quality assurance roles, there's test automation roles, there are DevOps roles, and there are UI UX roles as well if you're more design inclined. So tons of things, I think, that so it's not like a black and white switch, is it? It's more like a spectrum, isn't it, of non-technical to technical roles?
Yep.
Cool. Oh. Do we have other questions? Okay. Let's take one that we had initially, which I really did want to ask you, ladies. Because many of us we're at different stages of our career, and sometimes we get into job searches. So we want to join companies, obviously, that have a focus on diversity and inclusion initiatives, right? Now that we understand how important they are. So what kind of questions as a candidate can I ask interviewers to see whether or not this company is serious about their D&I initiatives? What do you think?
Definitely ask about what's the percentage of women in their leadership, down to that gives you a good idea of whether they're putting their money where the mouth is, and practice. The second thing is ask specifically for if it's about women, and lots of kinds of diversity, but we're talking about women here. So ask about what programs they have for women, particularly. Like some companies have fast track for women. Even with the Microsoft for Startups has got a special cloud accelerator program for female founders. So and then it's interesting. Ask them about how are they contributing to D&I in their ecosystem. That's a great question that I like to ask or hear about, because that really tells you. So for example, Microsoft does, but I also know Standard Chartered Bank does, and many others who look for gender smart suppliers. So you can, so that's actually creating ripple effect in the ecosystem. If you want to be a supplier to Microsoft, you need to have D&I principles, and you need to be gender smart. So imagine how many organizations would Microsoft now be touching to make sure there's a D&I mission. So yeah, so I think those kind of questions are what I would like to kind of touch upon.
Any other ideas, guys?
Anne, you want to go first, then I'll take it last.
I don't know. I mean, if I were to get serious, like what Annie said, then yeah, maybe I'll ask for the ratio of women, woman to the man workforce ratio in the company. I think that is the polite way to start asking it. I mean, if in a joking way, then there are so many ways of doing it, which I don't want to start talking about that anyway. I feel like you can gauge. Again, it depends on how comfortable you want to push for this kind of question as well. How daring are you as well? For me, I feel like I was pretty straightforward because I know what I had, the kind of support that I have been given in my past role. Therefore, if I were to go for my next one, I wouldn't actually be afraid asking for it.
Yes.
I would get straight to the point. What do I need? Just so I would consider this opportunity. If not, I wouldn't want to settle anything less than what I'm getting right now. So yeah, so it depends on how comfortable are you asking those kind of questions. So it can go very blunt, very very straightforward, or to something very subtle, maybe like just go with the figure, the women and the man ratio in the company. That would give you a good gauge of whether or not this company is being supportive of women and D&I stuff.
Sometimes I download the annual report and I look at the board and their management team, and it's very easy to see from the pictures how diverse the leadership team is. I actually did not want to join one company because of this. I looked at this, I looked at it, I was like, all men and some more from all the same ethnicity, and then there's like one woman there. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe they needed you, Lisa.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Go make a change.
Yeah. Okay, Kimberly.
I fully agree with what Anne and Annie said. I think starting off with the more explicit question, if you're comfortable, helps. I also think like asking cultural questions help, because as women, you also want psychological safety when you go into a role, and you also want to know that there's going to be room for you to grow. And so I like to ask questions that also gives me a sense of how this person, who maybe might be my manager, responds. And I will ask, like, oh, what do you think it would take for me to move to the next role? How long do you think that would be? What would I need to do? Do you think I could be successful here and lead a team? And just see how they respond to it. I mean, naturally, we all know as interviewers as well, you cannot promise anything, because the truth is you don't know how this person's going to perform. But there are some very clear-cut red flags where if they bring up things like, oh yeah, you need to be present all the time, something that's completely not performance driven, it gives you these little hints and insights that maybe this is not the company for you. And secondly, whether or not there's growth opportunities. If immediately at an interview stage, someone's already saying like, oh yeah, that's for later, we'll only decide later, and sort of putting you down, I think that's also a sign that you are going to need to work really hard to get yourself noticed. You're going to need to work really hard to make sure like people recognize you for your worth. And I think those are quite important also to help you make the decision around whether or not you really want to join this company. And even if you do, like what's the real goal you're going to get out of it, so that you also don't waste your time and get stuck in a wrong opportunity.
This one thing, yeah, I think super important thing I missed, which is please ask about pay parity. Please do your homework outside of, and this is super important, because if each one of us don't ask, we'll forever be in that cycle of under compensated. And there's a lot of data out there. There is Blind, for example, is one app out there which gives you it's amazing. In the tech field, you can know everything of what who gets paid, how much, what grade gets what. Go do your homework, Glassdoor, Blind, all of that. Yeah. And then raise that question towards the end. You don't talk pay in the beginning, but at the end, make sure there is pay parity, whichever way you ask that question. But please bring up the point and feel that you've been fairly treated before you join.
Totally agree. I mean, if there's any recruiters out there who are thinking of answering, oh, sorry, salary is confidential, you might want to rethink your answer if you want to attract women.
Salary will be confidential. They won't tell you. You need to do your homework. There's outside ways of understanding what's the right band. You don't get an exact salary. You get a band. But are you within that band? Are you at the top, at the bottom? But ask, and many times if you ask, they will share stuff that makes you understand where you stand with it.
Yeah, I think those exercises are really important. You know, I'm getting so inspired by this session. I think I'm going to go and ask my boss, like, who is the guy? Like, do you want to champion, you know, do you want to sponsor this D&I thing that I'm thinking of championing? First thing we do is pay parity exercise, okay? First thing we do, pay for it. We pay for an independent one. What do you think? Going to suggest that. Okay, my homework for next week.
Please come back and let us know how successful you are.
Exactly, I was going to say
On a
that.
public platform there is a question about what to do if, and it's an interesting one. What do we do when we get attacked by a fellow female colleague, you know, either at work, you know, out of spite or maybe out of revenge, or because she feels threatened that there's now another lady who has a seat at the table. Personally, that's not happened to me, but I can see that from the chat, it's happened at least to a couple of people. So what do we do in those circumstances? Has it ever happened to
being
you?
a woman the point here, or is it how is it different from fighting with a man?
That is a good question. Is it actually different from fighting with a man? Let me think about that. Maybe
It's about allyship. I think the question is
Yeah.
about allyship, that you are two women in maybe a room of 20, and
Yes.
I think then that becomes a super important point, because women need to support women. And before we talk about male allies, we should talk about women allies as well. So I'm not getting into how should we handle that. Was that the question? I'm just looking at it.
Personally, what I would do is maybe have a one-on-one conversation with the person to talk about the issue or what it was that she was upset with. And this is my approach with guys as well. You know, I once did this with another woman who did not attack me personally, but you know, she was scolding one of my staff, you know, in one of the meetings, who was also another woman, and one of my staff got quite upset. So I actually went to talk to her one-on-one because she's my peer, and she did actually, you know, just express remorse, and she cried a little bit in the office actually. So she wasn't aware. Actually, she wasn't aware that she was being that mean. So I think personal conversations can help, you know, before you fill up that HR complaint form, because everyone's human, right? So just try talking first.
Yeah, I mean, I would also prefer to clear the air directly with that person as well. And sometimes I feel like we get emotional as well at work. And then, you know, sometimes what we said didn't really mean, we didn't really mean what we said, right? I mean, I guess talking directly to that person to get into her shoes, I find that I would do the same. I would do the same. I feel like it would probably help her, and it would help me definitely.
I also think it depends on who this person is to you. I'm not sure who raised this question, but for example, if that person wasn't your peer and the person, let's say, was your manager or someone who was more senior than you, I think it's also important, if you cannot confront, also take note of how you want to act as a women leader yourself. You know, like, it doesn't mean that just because you receive this kind of treatment in future, I need to do this to someone else. And I think that's quite important, because as we are all growing in this space, we're all learning how to adjust. In the past, a lot of women leaders who made it because they had to be very aggressive. You know, they had to act like they were also male so that they are part of the culture. And I think that's changing. So it's also important to pick out characteristics and highlight, like, hey, you know, I experienced this. It was very uncomfortable. in future when I have my own team or when I have my own hire, I'm not going to do this with this person because I remember how it felt. And I think that's how we also break that cycle and bring in things like, empathy into the workplace as women leaders. And as you progress and lead your own company one day, maybe, right, you'll be able to take it a different direction.
Agree. I think on one last topic of discussion that we can have before we close, because it's such a broad area of diversity that we've discussed. What is, I think, for each of us going to be the one thing that we do this year to support D&I in the workplace? So I'm serious about the having that conversation with my boss. I commit that I'm going to do that for my department and for Group Digital in Petronas, and I hope I get somewhere. I'll suggest those things, and maybe we measure them as metrics. We don't assign anybody the KPI, until we start measuring certain things and we find out where we are. But it's something that I'm really keen to do in the workplace. So that's what I think I'm going to try my best to do this year. Oh no, it's already March. No, it's already April. It's April. I only have 3 quarters left. Okay.
We believe you can do it, Lisa.
Thank you. Anyone?
For me, I have a goal in mind, which is that D&I today is considered like, good, you're doing a lot of D&I. Great job, keep doing. That's the sense you get for the extra mile or extra 100 miles that you run for D&I. Yeah. Now, my charter this year is to make sure leadership takes a viewpoint on business benefits for that role we're playing, because it's not just a passion project on the side. It is something that's influencing the culture of the company, the long-term business of the company. It has so many ripple effect. So why not consider that as understand the business benefit of the work everybody, many parts are doing, understand the business benefit and compensate them accordingly, not just saying hi, good. So it compensate exactly how you would do reaching business goals, other revenue goals, I mean. So yeah, that's a passion project for me right now.
Okay, cool. Okay, can you let me have the secret magic formula when you?
I'm working on it. I'll exchange notes with you.
Next session, right? And you will do a brown bag on how to convert D&I into money. Okay.
Yes. Maybe it's a 5-year project. I don't know.
Kim or Anne?
Yeah, the one thing that I'm doing personally is making sure at least within my own turf, I'm doing what I can to protect my team. So I'm also a people manager. I have teams in various countries across Southeast Asia. And so whenever I hire, just making sure that whatever we discuss, we actually put into practice. Sometimes I do feel that the process and trying to change something at Grab or a whole company, it does take a lot of time and effort, and people tend to forget, like, actually you can do small things on your own as well. So just pay parity for the females in my team, right? Like just making sure that actually what they're earning for the roles are fair. Regardless whether or not you're male or female, I want to make sure that you're compensated properly. And that's something that I personally fight for my teams. Second is also making sure that within the culture within our team, no one has that sort of unfair treatment where they feel like, oh, I can't really speak up. And so just making sure that we have enough safe spaces. Sometimes that means I invest a bit more extra time to like have one-to-ones with this person, make sure like they're comfortable, make sure I understand how they function so that I can then bring them into discussions or work with them in a way that, doesn't make them feel like they can't say what they want to say. So I mean, those two are some of the main things that I'm doing personally, and just spending a bit more time off, this year.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah, I think I'm going to have 1 or 2 new female colleagues join the leadership bench this year. So I'm going to do my best to be extra supportive. People wonder what's wrong with me in meetings. Like, you had an idea? Speak up. And sorry.
I think it's for me it's always easier to lead a female direct report than the male. So, but to flip things around, I find that this D&I thing, we always focus on women. I know that we are talking so much about gender equality and, you know, to bring the balance to the workforce. Sometimes I also feel like we also need to start planting and giving the same kind of support to the male direct report as well. Because, like, for example, I think one of the things that I think Kim mentioned is like, if your male colleague or I think was it Lisa, you mentioned that if they need to go and pick up their kids, I feel like being supportive of that also shows that we are indirectly getting them to understand, to make that kind of impact. So whoever that in the future they are going to lead, if they step up as a leader, they understand that this is the kind of support that they would provide for their future team, which is essential. So the kind of direct influence is not difficult. I find women leading women because we can relate to it very easily. But to the male team, I find that, you know, it is something that we would, if we start doing more of that, even by listening more to their problems. Sometimes, you know, we would like, they would like to be seen as being tough, not having problems. Sometimes when you dig deeper, you also realize that they also struggle mentally as well, for example. To give them the similar kind of support, the kind of vulnerability that they go through in their personal life, if only they're comfortable to talk about. I find that that would create a different kind of impact in their lives around the woman around them. So yeah, I find this is something that I would like to do more because I have more male direct report than the female one. So that's what I'm going to do more this year.
That's right. All my direct reports are male.
Yeah.
It's the case in most engineering shops.
Yeah.
But yes. Okay, I think that's a great note on which to end and to pass back to Brianna. Thank you so much, ladies, for spending time with us today and gracing everybody with your valuable opinions and ideas. Okay. Thank you everybody for joining. And before you log off, don't forget after this we have a group photo as well. So please scan the QR code and give us your feedback about this session, what you would like to hear more about us. Like Brianna said, it is the first session of the year, so you have the most influence right now on what topics you'd like us to cover in the future. We already have a few ideas. We're thinking about covering mental health platforms, because that seems to be a hot topic, and also how to make the career pivot into technology. You know, many people ask about that question regardless of what kind of panel that we're having. So we know it's a burning question and a burning topic for all of you, but I'm sure there are others that we haven't been able to ideate amongst the committee ourselves. So we'd love to hear from you, not just about this session, but about what kind of future sessions you'd like to have from Women Who Code. Okay. We can move away from this slide now. I think someone will paste it into the chat later if in case you missed it. And here are our social media platforms. Do follow us if you want to stay up to date about what kind of events we're doing, what's coming up next, you know. Just sign up for any one of these will do, or follow us on all of them to support us. We'd really love to have the community participation from all of you. And maybe some of you want to be our panelists next time as well, or become part of the organizing committee, volunteer, or take my job as moderator. You know, we have lots of roles for you. And what's really good about this this forum is that there is a huge network of women in technology, various roles in various companies. So if you're looking to make a pivot in technology, it is a great network to get to know as well, because everybody in the committee as well as in the organizing team is very supportive of each other, and we'd love to help you out if that's something that you're interested in. And you can connect with me, Kimberly, Annie, and Anne as well on our LinkedIn. And you can make us into the influencers, which today we are not. So please join, please follow, and feel free to ping me as well if you have any additional questions on LinkedIn that you forgot to ask. I'd be happy to help. Oh, this is Annie's bit. Okay, Annie, do you want to go through this? Cool. Code without barriers.
Yes, our conversation this last hour and a half has been so inspiring, and we've had many conversations like that, which led to Code Without Barriers. So I want to share a little bit of some of the questions that you had earlier about how do we do something or the other. While one person may not have the answers to everything, there's a whole pool of women working behind Code Without Barriers. So that's what we're going to talk about. I'm going to share with you this Code Without Barriers platform. So this was born, I think, about a year and a half back in the pandemic, when we saw three things happening simultaneously. One was women were having higher job losses. Second was AI was becoming an even more powerful tool. And the third was World Economic Forum's report saying that the gender equality gap in countries were not closing because women were not in the advanced technology areas like data, AI, the more impactful ones. So together with communities and organizations which are in the Microsoft ecosystem, our customers, partners, and so on, we came together behind this one mission. So we believe innovation, entrepreneurs, creators, developers need to reflect society. So if there is 50% women out there, we need 50% developers, 50% entrepreneurs, etc. And this is a platform for female developers and talent to contribute toward an inclusive economic growth. So the point is to create a platform to connect you to jobs and opportunities, as well as to maybe get on the Malaysia AI Blueprint Council and be a voice to bring the female lens to that AI policies that Malaysia is making. Moving on, this is the core program. If you go back to the previous slide, three parts to this. One is to skill developers. So we have certification that I spoke about earlier. Today we have about 1,830 women in cloud and AI, and they're all brand new to cloud and AI. And the second one is working with women who code and communities like this to make sure that you are nurtured. So women who code, you have a natural affinity towards, but think about the data science community where there are 16,000 developers and maybe 100 women there. The opportunity to be part of those communities where opportunities, trends, all those things are being discussed. So to take women mainstream. And lastly, unlock career opportunities for you. So we have 17 partners and already we have 40 jobs and internships in the last quarter, and more are coming. So if you go to the next one, these are two opportunities for you right now. The first is there is a hackathon, so please sign up to that. The hackathon has partners who have given their industry challenge statements and their jobs, internships, or dollar prizes. So you have CIMB, you have Petronas, you have HCL, you have all kinds of organizations there. So just sign up and get there. The second one is mentoring circles. So starting in April, 6 months, there are these industry women leaders who are going to be mentoring you. So sign up for mentoring circles through this. That's it. So this is two small part of Code Without Barriers. Just click on the link above, ak.ms Code Without Barriers. You'll get there and see all what the platform offers. So inviting you all. Thank you.
Cool, thank you. And then Anne is hiring. So if you really like what Anne said, you want to be part of her team. Anne, can you tell us a little bit more about what it's like working with you and how to get that job?
I don't know. You would know after you join us. So just apply through. That's all I can say. Yeah, I mean it's a fast-paced environment and a lot of exciting things going on. I just can't just tell you all, but and we focus so much of innovation stuff. Even though during pandemic, I mean now hopefully now that we are slowly getting back to the office, we're able to do more of innovation stuff and the kind of collaboration that we used to be able to do more in pre-pandemic. Um, do do look out for the opportunity that you're able to find in our workday. There are loads of opening in our team. Just send through your CV. Like I said, if you think that you're only 70% fit, or if you're even 60% fit, apply through, because we need you. I mean, we are looking up for a lot of roles here. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Anne. Okay, great. We got it. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in today. I really do hope you found the session useful. Do enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you for spending time with us, and do sign up for our next session.